this. So these are our live international family dialogues. This is the 5th of 6 dialogues that we are having this year, all focused on the question, what do families worldwide need to be safe and healthy? And today we're going to be actually focusing on politics, and I'll get to that in a moment. But I want to start off with a video, then I'll give you some more details about Learning Life, our family diplomacy initiative, and then dialogues, and then talk to you a little bit about kind of set things up for our discussion today. So to start with,
the Family Diplomacy Initiative is a long-term effort to empower families to become involved in international decision-making. There is a lot of distrust in the world. And if we are to, in the long term, look to overcome that violence and distrust that exists between peoples in the world, we have to find common ground between people. And one of the most important common grounds we have is family.
Where the nutritional foods in India are quite cheaper than all the fast foods that we are importing from foreign countries, from other countries. So this is a kind of infusion, of cultural infusion. We can take it as new colonialism.
Give you money in relation of how many children you'll have. So the poor people are having more and more children in order to have more and more money, and the consequence you have is that we have a lot of poor children in our country.
Every day I see the new cases from the domestic violence, early marriage, forced marriage, and everything like that.
My kids came from different places. Some came with medication, family histories that you wouldn't want to listen to because they would be so upsetting. But my whole goal has been to grow out of your constrictions.
I think the idea of I learned a lot. I learned from even this family diplomacy right from the time when I was following it from the Facebook. It has changed and transformed my life as a refugee. I'm able to learn. So thank you.
Children from Nigeria.
Hi, we are from Mexico.
Marcy, I'm from Brazil.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. Let me just turn this off and get to hopefully the next slide. So a little bit about Learning Life. This may be, again, review to many of you, but we are an educational nonprofit based in the Washington, D.C. area, founded in 2012 with a mission to spread learning in everyday life beyond school walls. Our 3 programs are the Family Diplomacy Initiative, an international mentoring program, and the Democracy Dinners. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the Family Diplomacy Initiative because this dialogue is part of that. So our vision, generally speaking, is to reach a world where we're more connected and caring, because in every family there are 2 or more family diplomats who advocate for the needs, the concerns, and the aspirations of families wherever they are in the world, through businesses, governments, and nonprofits, right? So we're trying to make governments, businesses, and nonprofits more responsive to publics, and particularly to families, by ultimately training family diplomats to become active citizen diplomats in the world. And so our goal is not just to empower families to have a voice in government, businesses, and nonprofits at local to global levels, but also to nurture more caring, capable, and connected global citizens. And currently what we're doing, what we're focused on, is growing this Facebook group, right? We are now at close to 8,000 people across the world in the Facebook group. and engaging in these dialogues to get us to learn about each other and to begin to kind of talk about the substantive issues that are affecting families worldwide. So a little bit about the structure of the dialogues. Each of these dialogues is an hour and a half. It is open, but we have a set of speakers, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. And so you'll be encouraged to kind of ask questions, use the Zoom chat very much, and offer your perspective on different questions that we're focused on. So as I mentioned, the overall question that we're asking in these dialogues is, what do families worldwide need to be safe and healthy? But each of the 6 dialogues is a particular focus, and this dialogue is focused on politics. And so there are a set of issues, there are a lot of issues that government and politics impact in terms of family safety and health. The most obvious are violent conflict and its consequences. So if all goes well, you're going to hear from, among others, an Afghan family that has been affected by and is in fact in the United States, but working with refugee Afghan families. You're also going to hear about the role of religion in government and in families accordingly, the ways in which more religious governments regulate family relations, gender roles, clothing, et cetera, and so forth. And then we're going to talk a bit about corruption and its consequences, and about healthcare, both the pandemic response and other issues, about education and family opportunity. And to the extent that it comes up, we may talk about what some governments across the world offer, the wealthier governments, that the other governments don't offer, things like paid time to care for children, elderly, and the sick, provision of infant care, preschool, after school, unemployment insurance, et cetera, and so forth. And you may have other thoughts about issues that involve government and have an impact on family. So we're all here to kind of expand each other's imaginations of the problems and the possibilities. So I'm looking forward to your thoughts on these things. Lastly, just some notes about the dialogue. So this is video recorded, and we will be photographing along the way. At some point, I will ask you to all smile and do a screenshot. We are also asking you to make active use of the Zoom chat. So by all means, if you have questions, if you have comments, et cetera, and so forth, please use the Zoom chat, because that's actually part of the record of this dialogue. Keep yourself muted when you're not talking. Be respectful, of course, when you disagree, because here the object is to learn, not to win an argument. So that is pretty much it. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing this and then open up the dialogue. And I don't know if I'm checking to see who is here and if Hadija is here as yet. Hadija, are you here? She may not be, because I screwed up the link, in which case I need to get her, but I will get her sometime soon. So I'm going to start the dialogue here. We're going to focus on refugee issues and kind of government violence. And hold on a second. So I believe Aylin is joining us originally from Venezuela, but from Ecuador. Aylin, are you here?
Yes, I am. Good morning, everybody.
Great. So yeah, if you can speak briefly for about a minute or two about your particular situation and your family's situation in light of the situation in Venezuela.
Well, as I said on the Facebook group, it was very difficult for me to leave my country, because I wanted to stay there. It's my house, it's my country, it's my people. And it's very difficult to leave your place. to a new reality. When you do it because you want it, it's something completely different. But when you do it because you have to, it's something that breaks your heart because you want to remain in your place. And I had to do it because I was working. I had a work, 5 works in fact, but the thing is that I couldn't maintain my family with that. So I got an opportunity to work in Ecuador and I came here. That opportunity is over, but I came here and I found other better opportunities, and I'm still living here after almost 5 years. And well, that's pretty most I've been living very good in Ecuador. The thing is that, of course, I'm not going to lie. I miss my family. I've been living alone for more than 4 years. And well, most of my family are around the world. They are in Europe, in the United States, in most parts in Latin America, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, Mexico. They're all around the world. So it's very difficult because you don't know if you're going to reunite with your family again. And mostly because of politics. In Venezuela, there is a big protest. It has been for more than 20 years because there is a government, well, now a dictatorship. And it's been very difficult to live in Venezuela for many reasons that in this moment I won't share because it's a lot of things. But yeah, this is the situation that we have living, and most families in Venezuela have been living the same situation. Thank you.
Hey, Lynn, can you just tell us a little bit about where, so your family's scattered all over the place, but I gather your mom is still in Venezuela.
Yeah.
How is she, what is life like for her? If you could talk about what life is like and how it's changed from what it was before. And because this is clearly kind of massive government impact on families' lives, it's not only divided you guys so that you're living in different countries in order to support your family, because I gather there's not employment available, but I'm wondering particularly about your mom and what things are like in Venezuela for her, and how you contrast that with what it was like before the Chavista government came into power.
Yeah. Well, it's difficult because she's 76 years old. I'm 34. She got me at 42 years old. And we didn't imagine this situation was going to happen. The thing is that Chavez was a person who, Hugo Chavez, the ex-president from Venezuela, he was a person who had a big charisma, and he had, I don't know, he was easy to convince people. He was this kind of person that people fell in love with him or hated him. And my mother voted for him the first time. And the thing is that, my mother is living there alone because most of my family are out of the country or out of Caracas. Caracas is the capital city in Venezuela. And she's living alone in Caracas because nobody wants to. First, nobody lived in Caracas before. Most people lived in other places in the country. And now my mother is living alone, depending on neighbors, depending on friends, okay? And it's very difficult because right now she is with COVID-19. So it's very difficult for me to be here and not there. But I know that I have to be here because I can protect her from here. If I bring her with me, it's very difficult for me because life there is cheaper than here, okay? So if I send her an amount of money, it's going to be better for her to receive it there because she's going to have more power, more money to buy things, okay? If I give her the same amount of money here in Ecuador, it's not going to work for anything. So for now, I had to make the decision of staying here and leaving her there. It's very difficult. It's very complicated. If I take her here, there is a possibility that people take my house in Venezuela, because this is a problem in Venezuela. If you leave your house, they take your house, okay? They just invade your house and you don't have a house anymore. It's a very big problem. And I have a question in the chat. Can I answer it, or
absolutely, please do. And Gustavo, if you could mute yourself, just make sure everybody mute yourself if you're not actually speaking. Go ahead.
Are most Venezuelan families scattered in as many countries as yours? Are the majority of Venezuelan refugees in Colombia? Well, no, I'm not in refugee status. That's a second question. No, I'm completely legal. I came here 4 years ago, invited by the Ministry of Education as a teacher, as an English teacher. And well, that job finished for many reasons. But yeah, I continued living here, and I'm completely legal, which is not the situation of many people. Okay, I've met many people here in Ecuador, and it's difficult for them because they come with very scarce amounts of money, and they are desperate. They're desperate to come, and it's because the situation in Venezuela is impossible. And yeah, most Venezuelan families are scattered. They are separated around the world. People who have families in Europe go to Europe. People who have families in Latin America, because let's remember that Venezuela was a country that received many people before, okay, from many countries that were under dictatorships or terrible situations in Latin America. For example, Chile, Argentina, Colombia. Colombia is a country that is a sister country, okay? And it's sister because in Spanish, it's, you know, feminine. And it's difficult because people have been separated. We don't know how to migrate. It's the first time we have to leave our country. The first time ever, okay? So we don't know this thing of the migration. It's been difficult for us. Not only the good people, when I say the good people, not only the people who work, who have principles, who have values, are leaving the country, also the bad people, the people who don't have principles, the people who don't have values are leaving the country. And this is being a very serious problem for many countries in Latin America, including Ecuador, okay? And I don't know exactly which country is holding the biggest number of Venezuelans, but it is said that the numbers are Colombia, Ecuador, and Chile, okay? These are the countries that have the biggest population of Venezuelans here in Latin America. In Europe, I wouldn't know how to, which the number would be. But yeah, Colombia, Ecuador, and Chile are having the biggest number of Venezuelan refugees.
Tennille is I believe joining us from. I'm trying to see if she is here. Tennille, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Doc.
Okay,
yeah.
Thanks. I can't see among all the many boxes, but I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about, because what you'd mentioned is that from your vantage point, from somebody coming from Trinidad and Tobago. Some Venezuelans have actually come to Trinidad and Tobago. So if you could talk a little bit about that. But before you do that, if everybody, I need to, before I forget, take a screenshot. It's important for us to kind of represent everybody who is joining us. So if you could turn on, for those of you who have not turned on your screens, turn it on, or turn on your video, and you can cough yourself if you need to. But I'm going to, in a moment, ask you to smile on 3. Amal, Kaylee, Alasia, and Dr. Nazmul, if you could turn on your videos, please, that would be great. And Emily, I don't know if Emily's actually paying attention. Okay, so on 3, 1, 2, 3, smile. Awesome, thank you. Let me take just one more quick photo. Hold on a second. And on 3, hold on a second. Okay. On 3, 1, 2, 3, smile. Awesome. Perfect. Thank you. So Tennille, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon, everybody. So just to add to what Eileen was saying, like it is true, like the hardship that the blow that Venezuela was hit, they had to migrate to other Caribbean islands, Colombia, Latin America, all over. But what I could also say is that the Caribbean culture that we have is one of camaraderie. So if like one person, one country is hurting or ailing, everybody else tries to see how they could chip in, whether it be from natural disasters or political unrest and that kind of stuff. The family was altered in a sense because, at least for Trinidad and Tobago, between 24 and 27,000 people migrated to Trinidad and Tobago because I think we're like about 4 or 5 miles away from Venezuela. And so the family was altered because that mass migration of Venezuelans, we had to change, like for instance, our ATM banking systems. Yes, we taught and we learned Spanish, but now because a lot more Spanish-speaking people came in, we had to do it like a dramatic change in the ATM and the electronic systems. So yeah, a lot of people moved over, as well as the other Caribbean islands, Jamaica, Barbados, and that kind of stuff. So to add, it's true that there was a lot of difficulty. I think our period was between 2018 and 2021, well, 2020. And one person said, like, does Trinidad and Tobago get any refugees from Haiti? We do have some Haitian, like, whether it be diaspora Haitian people that come. I haven't seen much though, but yeah, we do get some Haitians as well. Because it's like, I heard one person say the Caribbean culture, we all have one culture, but every island has a different culture. So even if you have a different culture, you still feel at home and not totally an alien in another Caribbean island. Yeah, thank you.
I'm wondering, are there any questions before? There are other perspectives that we want to hear from, including one of our interns, Gustavo, who's Costa Rican, but actually spent some time in Malawi in a refugee camp, and he has an interesting perspective there. But any thoughts or questions thus far on the discussion or additions? Okay, I'm going to let Gustavo talk. If you would give, Gustavo, just give some explanation of where you were, why you were there, and what you found, because it links to some extent to political corruption, but it's also about kind of just the condition of refugee families. And then I believe we have Data Robert is actually with us, I believe. And so if you could speak next, I think Data, if he is with us still, yes, I think he is. It'd be great to hear from him because he's actually a refugee, as I remember, in Uganda from Sudan. So Gustavo first.
Hi, Paul. And hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Yeah, as Paul said, I'm originally from Costa Rica, but I spent 6 months in Malawi, specifically in the Taleka refugee camp. I was part of a volunteer program. And well, for those who, like me, appreciate the visual support, I just want to show you real quick. Like, this is Africa in Malawi, it's down here. It's pretty small. It is known as the warm heart of Africa because it has it has peace until a certain extent. So, well, to retake something that I think Tennille said, it is true. We usually understand refugee as any person that is displaced from their original country, either by political unrest or by natural disasters. In a more formal sense, refugee is a status granted by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, also known as the UNHCR. But before they get that status, they are all they are only known as asylum seekers. And this is really important to understand this part of the problem. The refugee camp of Taleka, that we have right here, holds, by 2013, it used to have 17,000 people. By March 2018, they had 37 people. And by December last year, they had 48,000 people. With everything that is happening in Afghanistan right now, it is expected that this number will increase really fast. Most of the stories that I heard at Saleka were about violent groups creating political instability. And most of them got their, well, most of the people that had to flee from mostly Congo, that is this big country right here, close to Malawi, had very similar stories. Most of them got their parents murdered by these groups. So they had to take their families, like their brothers and sisters and whatever they could carry, and leave the country. That area that connects Congo with Malawi goes through Rwanda and Burundi. And it's really dangerous. It's a really dangerous area. There's a lot of violence, and there's a lot of people getting murdered in that zone. And mostly adult men get murdered. And I have to say like this because it is what is happening. They get murdered first, and eventually, like women, they get the worst part of the violence. Once they arrive to places like Malawi, mostly children, sometimes alone, they get transported to the center of the country where the refugee camp is. They are, once there, they are allocated with families that already live at the refugee camp and that are willing to receive more people. So it's normal to see like in these small structures, this can be like around 15 square meters or for United States, 160 square feet. And it's usual to see like 12 people living there. This housing is supposed to be temporal, but ends up, at the end, it turns out to be the forever home for many asylum seekers. Many will die old, still waiting for a chance to reconnect with their original families. Some will get married and have children in the camp. And if they're lucky, they will even find an income or any type of activity that they can dedicate to. While I was in Malawi, while I was in Saleka, I realized that asylum seekers were not really looking for food or housing or these kinds of support. What they wanted the most was to get the refugee status, because once they get the status, they're provided with a passport. In this case, a Malawian passport. And with that, they have access to other programs, but especially they have the opportunity to go back to their countries and reunite with their families, if they are still there. Like Eileen said, it happens also there that the families get scattered once they start running away from whatever is happening. They go to different refugee camps. There are refugee camps in Zambia, in Kenya, in many other countries, and they don't even know where they are, right? So the only hope is to go back, in this case to Congo, and trying to trace their families. And sometimes it takes all their lives to do this. So I'm trying to learn the process in Malawi of how it works. So be able to help my friends from the refugee camp to get their status. And although there is a formal procedure, the corruption in the system has sequestrated the entire process. The UNHCR gives certain amount every year to hosting countries for they to provide certain commodities, but especially for the process of the refugee status. But what they do in Malawi is that they send their families, the government officials pass their families and friends as refugees and send them abroad to these programs. So that makes it even harder for actual asylum seekers, actual people who was displaced by violence to get their status. And following like this process and trying to figure it out, how to make this happen, I ended up talking with certain government officials. I never met them face to face. I was told that the refugee status was going to cost me $100. It's not because I was a foreigner. It is how it works, even for the refugees. They are told you have to pay $100 if you want your status. And the problem is that we're talking about people that fled their countries without anything but the clothes that they were wearing. They arrived to a new country where there was no opportunity to get a job, and they have nothing. So how are they going to find $100? It is not going to happen ever, unless someone from outside helps them. And so I did. And I'm so sorry to have been part of this corrupted system, but it was the only way to help this person get the refugee status, get their passport, leave the country, and reunite with his family. This is the current, yeah.
Yeah, Gustavo, if you could try to limit yourself or conclude your thoughts.
Yeah, that was it. Like, this is the state of the situation, and this was my experience. So yeah, if there's any questions,
great,
or anything, yeah.
I'm going to pass on to Data Robert, who's joining us from Uganda. Data Robert, if you could just explain your situation, why you're in Uganda, but if I understand correctly, from Sudan, if you're able to listen to us and tell us, yeah, a little bit about your situation as a refugee. He may not be available right now, so I'm gonna switch to Hadija, who is joining us from the United States, but she is Afghan. I don't know, Hadija, if you have.
Are you getting me clear? Are you getting me clear?
Okay.
Yeah.
Robert, can you speak to a little bit to your situation in Uganda?
Okay. Yes. Thank you for hosting me this evening. And I appreciate all that you have been doing with the rest of the team. Here in Uganda, we are living as a refugee. And the situation that has forced us to be here in Uganda is the state of being corrupt in the nation.
He's got some connection issues, understandably. Robert, what you may want to do is
everybody wants to build up himself, but don't what one called for. But you find yourself that you are being in the situation.
Okay, Robert, what I think, because your connection is fairly
so here in
poor.
Uganda,
yeah, he doesn't realize this yet, but Robert, if you could, you're probably going to hear this in spurts, but if you can,
where people ask to escape for their life, to their safety. So I don't know whether you are getting me clear.
No. So the best thing is
the network is expanding.
Yeah, the best thing is for you to write into, if you're able to, write into the Zoom chat your situation and explain, if you would, why you're in this refugee camp, where you're coming from, and whatever else you'd like to explain to us and share, because we'll share that out. In the meantime, Hadija is joining us from the United States, but is originally from Afghanistan. Hadija, I don't know if you're joining with family. I think it looks like you have your daughter with you. We can't really see very well, but if you could introduce yourselves and explain well, your own situation, and then what you've been doing with Afghan refugees here in Virginia in the United States.
Hi, my name is Hadija Hashimi. I'm American Afghan. I lived in the United States for 38 years. I came to the United States as a refugee, and my daughter here, Amina.
I'm Amina.
Amina Hashimi is born here. So the situation in Afghanistan due to constant war is deteriorating, and to a recent event in Afghanistan. When I left Afghanistan, the situation was not as bad, but now it's a different scenario. It's very devastating. So my daughter and I are volunteering at the base, Quantico base in Virginia. They're housing approximately 4,500 refugees from Afghanistan. So they are ranging from very young to old, like 50, 60 years old, and they just fled the country due to war. And some, they just, it's been very tough on them, and they're in a state of shock and disbelief, and they left Afghanistan with just few items they could carry, um, very limited, and now they are just wondering what is going to happen. Some do speak English, some don't, and then it's just really heartbreaking to see and listen to everyone, and just how politics played such a bad role in Afghanistan, and made this country that used to be a very peaceful, stable, and now it's just everything is uncertain. And situation in Afghanistan right now, there is nobody's working, no income for citizens. The only the only thing is there's no war, but it's still there are suicide bombers here and there. So,
does your daughter, I'm sorry, I missed your name, but do you want to talk about what role you've been playing in your own experience?
Yeah, so my name is Amina Hashimi. So what I've been doing is going with my mom to Quantico and helping to translate for people at the medical center. My background is in healthcare, so yeah, it is something that I've been doing as like a profession and studies. So it is heartbreaking to see how like the problems in Afghanistan, like the lack of healthcare, how that has like they're dealing with a lot of like health issues from mental health to like physical health. It's like you could see that in poor countries, like people are getting over medicated, and seeing that here in the medical center, there's a lot of people who are getting over they expect to be medicated with like pills or medicine, and that's not really doable at the medical center due to like the lack of supplies and medication for these people. So it is really tough to see, but that's what I'm doing.
Thoughts, comments, others who'd like to chime in?
I have a question.
Goldnar.
Yeah, I'm wondering what is happening with the Afghani refugees in Virginia. Is there a plan for them? Or, what kind of housing or support are they receiving?
Well, currently they are at the base waiting for their background checks and health screening. And once it's complete, because every base like Quantico has 45,000, and there's other bases as well. They have some like, and then some other people are still in Kuwait and Germany and some other countries that they have to vet it through a lengthy process. And I'm not sure how I didn't get to hear from anyone when I was on the base. The Marines, they have no knowledge of what is going to happen. The only thing they know right now to help whatever they can to, study process. So I'm hearing from some sources that they eventually go to the societies in different communities, and they will receive some help from local communities up to 90 days and for maybe the temporary housing, and then they have to get to work and find their income to support themselves. For some people it's not hard. They've been doing that, like they know English, but some I believe most of them, they just have no clue. It's a culture shock, and on top of that, some they just like so tired of everything, and they are not physically fit or mentally fit to go into society to find a job, for example. I mean, a 50-year-old man who doesn't speak English would have a tough time finding a job. So there would be a lot of work, community work and volunteerism to help these refugees in long terms.
So I want to get, I guess, an older perspective on kind of conflict, violent conflict, and other issues of diaspora and refugee crisis, et cetera, and so forth. And this is coming from Amal, who is joining us from Jerusalem. And so Amal, if you could speak to kind of connecting to these issues of kind of refugee crisis. You are, if I think Amal is with us. Amal, yes, you are. And Amal, if you can happen to put on your video, that would be wonderful. And I don't know if you have any family joining, but yeah, if you could speak to your family situation, as a Christian Palestinian family, and then more broadly about the situation in Palestine and Israel.
Okay, so hi everyone, I'm Amal and I'm coming from Jerusalem. I'm currently live in Jerusalem with my family, with my small family, I mean, because the other members of my family lives in Jordani, which is separated from Jerusalem by the checkpoints. So it's a little bit harder to join them. So it's easy for us to go to join the family in the Cisjordani, but it's so hard for them to come and join us in Jerusalem because they need a permission from the Israeli government to pass that checkpoint and to join us in Jerusalem. About my family, my mom is a refugee member during the war of 48 between the Israeli and the Palestinian parties. So there were many like families who were immigrated from their cities to Cisjordani and to other Arab cities. So my mom's family has immigrated to the to Jerusalem and to the Cisjordani. So in Palestine, we have like many of refugee camps, and they are all in bad situations regarding to education, health, everything. But we have like an international organization for refugees. It's called UNRWA. It's an international organization of United Nations. So this organization tries to offer services for refugees in Palestinian camps, either in Palestine or in Jordan and Lebanon and Syria. But unfortunately, they can't help. They can't help them really good because there are many of refugees. So I understand that it's really hard to help all these refugees to to have like a good health and education. So yes, if anybody has a question.
Questions for Amal?
I have a question. How is the process of being allocated with a family abroad? Is like only if you have someone outside who can receive you, you are going to be, have the opportunity to leave the country, or they ask for you to go there?
Both. If like someone lives in United States, they can ask for a familiar recruitment, for example, so we can go there. But it's really hard. These procedures are not easy to do by the embassy, by like the American embassy or like other embassy around the world. And I, for example, as a Palestinian who lives in Jerusalem, I can ask also to join my family in abroad, but it's difficult. It's not easy. So I can ask them to have like a refugee status or yeah, or like immigration. So we have many many requests, many demands. Yeah, we can apply for many things, but it's not easy.
We're going to switch gears a little bit and move into the touchy subject of religion and government. And so it would be great to hear from Ruja, who is joining us. She's from Turkey, but she is joining us from the United States, and she's going to be talking about a couple of issues that affect families that are political issues. One is with regards to the hijab, and then the other is regard to adultery, so Ruja, go ahead.
Hi guys, I'm Ruja. As Paul mentioned, I am from Turkey, and I will mention about two policy changes that I think it affected families. The first one was in 1980, and there was a military coup. And the reason of the coup was the military thought the government was being too political Islamist and conservative, which the military doesn't think is good. So on paper and constitutionally, Turkey is even a more secular country than the US. So for them, any kind of representation of religion shouldn't be allowed in public, especially the state departments. So after that coup, 1980, they banned hijab or any kind of head cover in universities, departments. You can be a government employee if you wear hijab, or even if you are in your third year in university, either you will have to give up your hijab or the school. So that law lasts for 30 years. It stopped in 2010. Recent is not even that long time ago. So women at that time, either they couldn't study or they had to change their lifestyles. So I am a secular person, but for me, I think that's not really good, because you can't really tell them to not cover their hair and just not let them go to school because of that. And I think the other issue is also connected with this law. The other law that changed in 2000, I think 2000, adultery, it was illegal till 2000 in Turkey, and it was punished for both for women and men. And they stopped.
Just to be clear, sorry, just in case you don't know that word, adultery essentially means cheating on your spouse, cheating on your husband or wife with somebody else. Go ahead, Ruja.
Yeah, it was illegal since 1923, since the country found. And as a secular person, I should agree that it shouldn't be criminalized, but I kind of agree with that law, because Turkish men, I think they have tendency to want more than one woman. So when they stopped this law, adultery became regular. It was just now it's just a reason to divorce. It's not a crime. And if that guy marries a uneducated woman or a woman who can't really work, he just brings another woman in the same house or another house, and he's living with the both women or even more. And that wife, she probably wants to leave him, but she doesn't have enough income or experience in life. So she has to deal with that. And I think the worst part for the girlfriend, or if you call the second wife, for them, they don't have any rights on man's properties or anything. If he has a child from the girlfriend, and if he leaves her, that kid can't get child support or anything from the guy. So imagine a family like this for both sides, for the wife and children, and the girlfriend and children. If the law was still ongoing, it couldn't be that easy to do the same thing, because there's a stop that they will be punished if they do this.
Yeah. Thoughts, questions, and so on. Actually, my partner here, I'm wondering if she has any thoughts on this, in part because, well, she's a faculty member at a university here at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and she kind of specializes in religion and gender issues and deals with a variety of things. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts on this. Sorry, I'm putting her on the spot.
Yes. I mean, I can express some thoughts on this. I wasn't under the impression that when the law against adultery was enforced, that it had much effect if you go inside of the Anatolian Peninsula. In other words, these secret marriages, as they're sometimes called, would still continue to take place, and that the law had limited effect on both preventing these secret marriages and in enabling the women who were in effect the second wives or the girlfriends, as you said, Ruja, enabling them to have some sort of recourse if they were, for example, if they were left, right, to fend for themselves if the man left them. And so I mean, I would like to hear your perspective on that. In other words, how effective you think the law was. And in part, I say that my understanding was that the law wasn't that effective because the system itself was corrupt. In other words, for example, the leader of a tariqat, one of the Sufi orders. This is a term that's a little difficult to explain, but these groups of, let's just say, groups of like-minded people who ostensibly engage in religious practices together. If they were very influential, if they had a lot of followers, that a powerful person who was affiliated with this group, or a person who didn't necessarily have to be powerful, but a person affiliated with one of the more influential tariqats could get around the law, right? So they have cooperation with local authorities, where the local authorities will look the other way and not punish, not listen to the women. So Ruja, I'd like to hear from you if you think that's correct, or what your perspective is on how effective the law was when it was enforced.
The reason why they lifted the law was officially to enter the European Union, because European Union, they don't support adultery being crime, and in most developed countries it's not a crime. So to be more civilized, they lift the law. That's the main reason for them. I don't know if they have any other ideas in their minds too. And I think it wasn't a bad law. Mostly they were enforcing the law, And it was even illegal if you see adultery and if you don't report it. Okay. And for example, you know, one of your friend or family members, they are committing adultery and you don't report. And if they get caught, you will get punished too. Right. So nobody will take risks to do that.
Mm-hmm. So in the interest of time, because we have about 25 minutes and lots of issues to raise, I want to go to, we're now switching countries again, but not going very far. We're going to Italy. Rosella, well, is in Europe. I can't remember if she's at The Hague. I think she's at The Hague, but she is Italian. And is going to be talking to us about the mafia and about other issues affecting Italian families and Italian politics.
Yeah, thank you. I am joining you from Brussels, actually, but yeah, I'm from Italy. Yeah, I wanted to speak about two main problems that are currently affecting families in Italy. The first one that there is still nowadays a debate going on is allowing marriage for LGBTQ community. So the government allowed the possibility of civil unions for LGBTQ community. With
LGBT, just to be clear, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered community is what she's talking about. Go ahead, Rosella.
Yeah, with the law of Trinidad in 2016, but not wedding, and the legal and economic aspect of civil unions and marriage is the same. However, civil union is socially recognized as a inferior relation because it does not imply fidelity, and furthermore does not allow adoption and other requests, for example, for artificial insemination. And according to the current statistics, despite the majority of people are pro-LGBTQ marriage, and Italy defines itself as a safe place for LGBTQ community, there are many cases of harassment and violence. As recently, there is a debate about the stipulation of a law to criminalize violence due to sexual orientation, but it's still really debate in Italy. Like now it's almost 1 year that almost every day people keep hearing about that and the problem of being actually recognized by the government. This is even linked to the presence of the church. And the second problem is that the impacts family is corruption. According to 83% of Italian people, politics does not do enough to stop criminal organizations such as, for instance, mafia in Italy. So to talk about mafia is really complicated, but historically mafia was born after the Italian unification in Sicily. So in the south, I'm even from the south, I'm from Calabria, really close to Sicily, where the economy was still based on large estate owners and farmers, and still a bit nowadays. So for this reason, there is this big difference between south and north of Italy. And the administrators back then were like the middleman between these estate owners and the farmers, and they actually started to this act of violence and criminality, asking for money and all this action of violence that then became more and more organized. This is why in Italy we can call it organized criminality. Nowadays, mafia has the control of, I don't want to say most, but I think so, like a big part of the economy and the politics process in Italy is sometimes even in newspaper is defined as a state inside the state, and often it takes advantage of poverty and lower income families to drag them into criminal life. For instance, I don't know if you know, it's really famous, the series Gomorrah has been really famous about the mafia in Napoli. There it's really clear there are some videos and pictures of how lower income family are more likely to join this organized criminality because the state doesn't offer them basic income or doesn't offer them a stable job, especially in Italy where unemployment rate is really high. And for this reason, they decide, okay, we go and join these families because even mafia really a code behind it, but it's really long and difficult to describe because it's just that even people join them, they cannot even go out it. And this is more or less the dynamic that happens. They do not trust the government anymore, and they start to trust criminalities and these people.
Before we kind of comment on this thing, a couple of things. One is, I think it's great that there's a continuing dialogue in the Zoom, and you guys are, continuing with conversations. Please, by all means, contribute to the conversation there on prior issues, other issues that people have raised. I want to highlight something that Khalid said in the Zoom, because I think, as an American, it's worth mentioning that I think Americans, whether we're aware of it or not, and whether we take responsibility or not, the United States has a huge role in the world. It can be positive, and then in the case of Afghanistan, it clearly in many ways has not been positive. And it has had repercussions for other countries around Afghanistan, including Pakistan. So, and Khalid is joining us from Pakistan. So appreciate his perspective. And I think we need to all be open, I think particularly as Americans, to the criticism that may be coming from other parts of the world that we may not hear at times. But I want to switch to Mexico, because Ana is joining us from Mexico, and speaking on this issue that Rosella raised from Italy about criminality. If you could talk, Ana, a little bit about the narco trafficking gangs in Mexico, and the ways in which that has impacted family life, and the ways in which that has impacted politics, right? It's both kind of, it's corrupted politics and seems to be impacting families as well.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yes, about the drug cartel violence, I think that here in Mexico, we normalize a lot the violence that it's near, that is near us, because we have the violence that, or the kills that happens around like in every corner, but I will give like some specific examples that I could remember. One is that sometimes, and recently this year, some drug cartels have taken village here in Mexico, and they don't let pass the police or food to the people. And also when they like take the village, sometimes they commit like killings with the people that is in the village. And because the police cannot pass inside, a lot of people is dying. And I think that the worst of this is that the government tried like to not pay attention to it, and a lot of media are not covering these histories, because these histories do not benefit the president or the political party that is in power. So I think that it's very sad, and it's not like a good thing. Yes, one kill that take place here in Mexico that I search because I see a series in Netflix, but I think it's very interesting, is the killing of Allende. Allende is a city in Coahuila that is a state in Mexico. This kill take place in 2011, and I find it very interesting because a lot of people die, but like a lot of people in Mexico don't know about this because, as I said, the media is not covering these histories until a bigger media like Netflix take the history and make a series of it, and the people start knowing of this. Yeah, and also about politics, drug cartels are like a lot involved here in Mexico with politics, because sometimes it has discovered, well, some periodists have discovered that drug cartels pay the campaigns of some political leaders to make them win the elections, or also the drug traffickers kill the opposite leaders that like they don't fit with their interests. So it's when the elections came, it always epoch of a lot of violence. An example is this year. We have elections in July, I think, and some experts said that this was the most violent year of Mexico. Like, well, the most violent elections, because a lot of political leaders, a lot of governors get killed by drug cartels. And some interesting thing here is that a lot of these, well, the people that win in these states, that the people were killed, were from Morena. Morena is the party from the president, AMLO, Andrés Manuel López Obrador. And yes, a lot of people start complaining about it, saying like, why isn't the president doing something about this? Well, that's because the governors that get elected belong to their party, and we can see the corruption that is very present here in Mexico, and also when the political leaders that the drug cartels elect, when their leaders are in the government, we can see all the citizens. We can see it's very obvious, like the agreements that are between them. Because, for example, well, I live in Puebla, and Puebla used to be like a very Pacific city, but when another party came into power, the party asked the drug cartels to pay more money to the government, so in order to like not putting them into the prison. But the drug cartels did not accept, so the violence started increasing here in my state, and it becomes like very insecure. So we can say like there is an agreement between government and drug cartels. And also some experts in this subject says that it's like another state managed by the drug cartels and not really by the political leaders. So I think like it's very surprising, like knowing this information, because like a lot of Mexicans know like this link between these two sectors, but like they don't do anything about it. Or also because we normalize violence, we think like it's normal and we have to let it pass. But I think that we have to solve this problem, because it's getting like very insecure in Mexico, and also damage, well, us, the citizens, the people, the families, because also there are a lot of kidnappings because of drug cartels. We have like a lot of killings too. And yeah, I think that's all.
Anna, I did not know that it sounds like the corruption is going both ways, right? It's not, but if I understood you correctly, that some political parties are demanding revenue from the drug cartels in order to say, well, if you pay us, we won't put you in prison. Is that correct? Wow. So corruption runs both ways. It's really interesting. Just want to highlight a note from Eileen, who's joining us from Ecuador and who spoke first. You may want to read her comment here, which is kind of shocking, about the Sinaloa cartel, which I believe is a Mexican cartel. I didn't know they were active in Ecuador.
In many countries in Latin America, they have representatives all around Latin America.
And so they took over a prison and started killing those people, I guess, who were opposed to their
yes.
an opposing gang. Okay. Yeah, so we are going to get, we focused a lot on the problems with politics. There is going to be kind of a bright light coming soon. And it may come from an unexpected corner that you might not imagine, which is China. Marvin is joining us from China. Excuse me, he's from China, but he's actually joining us from Minnesota in the United States. And he is going to be talking about healthcare in China and how things have changed in terms of healthcare for millions and millions of Chinese people. Marvin?
All right, thank you, Paul. Good evening, good morning, everyone. So I will give some example for you to learn about the healthcare situation changed in China. See, when I was younger, when I was like a child, we had no healthcare. We had no insurance from the government. At that time, we were like all my family, we were afraid to go to the hospital because it's going to be a huge cost for families. There were many families that they lost all their life savings by going to the hospital. It was expensive back then. I remember my father's father, when he was having some liver problem, when he was in his 40s, they spent all the family savings to go to hospitals in our local state, go to Shanghai for a better hospital. I mean, that was sad that even though they spent all their lifetime savings, he didn't survive very long. So it was a burden for people back then to go to the hospital. Regularly, we would just go to our local clinics. There will be like a few clinics around our community. We can go there for small diseases like a cold, like some kind of hurt, some kind of injury. But for bigger surgery, we try to avoid that. Some of the older people will avoid the hospital by suffering from their illness. But now, like I would say, about 5 years ago, after China have developed, the country became more wealthy, so they had more money to put into the healthcare. So right now the situation is, my mom, if you know about China doesn't have that much like races problem. They have like different kind of like we call them 户口. We call them it's for identity. Like people are categorized by their like farmers or like factory workers or government officials. We have different, not mostly just like the people who live in the city and people living in the countryside. There are two major differences. For my mom, her 户口, her identity considered as farmer. Before farmer, the group of farmer will be considered as the poor people in China, lower income people in China, because they don't get paid very well from what they are grown from their land, because the government only limited the price of the crops, the price of all the agricultural products, so that the country can keep like a balance on their food. Anyway, but now the Chinese government is giving lots of investment into the farmers. Like they are building new nest houses and community for the farmers, for the villages, and also not necessarily build for the farmers. They will give a big amount of money towards the local farmers for, buying products to build a house, or like give them money directly for building new houses, or having new system of like gas or heating system. The best part is for the healthcare. Like my mom right now, literally, they only need to pay 100 yuan, which is about $15, to cover like 90% of their hospital cost. The deductible is only like 500 yuan, not even $100. That means, any money you spend after your first 500 yuan, like $100, 90% of those will be covered by the government.
And that's for, Marvin, that's for all Chinese citizens?
That's for all Chinese farmers. I see. That's a policy for the farmers. For
what
the
about
citizens,
what about factory workers? What about factory workers? Are they covered?
They have been having, those people have had good coverage for a long time. Like for me, I'm that category, like a family workers. I mean, family workers just considered like citizen. I don't know how should I, because the farmers don't live in the city, so they are not really called citizens in China. So for us, they are citizens literally, but I would say the people who live in the city have another category. Okay, these people, since we make a salary from doing some kind of work, we have an employer, and we'll pay it's like about 5% of our income goes into like our insurance. We have to pay. I remember when I was working in China, I was making about 4,000 yuan, and it's about 300 some or 200 some has to go to my insurance. Like just like here, you have a tax. I'm there. I don't have to pay tax. Then I think the tax. I didn't have to. If I don't make over like 5,000 or 6,000, I don't have to pay any tax in China. It's like it's a little bit different there. Anyway, so my point is, for the people who live in the city, not the farmers, they already had insurance system already.
It sounds like the insurance system, the health insurance system covers at this point everybody: farmers, yes, factory workers, higher income professionals, et cetera, and so forth at 90%. Yeah, it's yes, interesting. We don't have that many minutes left, and I want to switch to Joe Tolles, who's going to be talking actually about adoption laws, a quite different topic, but nonetheless, I think it's worth emphasizing. You know, it's interesting from our vantage point in the United States, we hear a lot of, about authoritarian regime in China and all of these things. So it's really interesting to get your perspective, in part because we're getting your perspective as somebody who's seen a lot of the positives of growing power of the Chinese government and the growing wealth of the Chinese economy. It has had a real massive influence on increasing the material well-being of Chinese people, who represent, I can't remember, but with 1.4, 1.5 billion people in the world of Chinese people in a world of 7.5 billion people. You guys have been singularly, the Chinese government is singularly responsible for the massive increase in the number of, massive reduction in the number of people who are poor in the world, right? Because so many Chinese people have been taken out of poverty over the last several decades. So it's really, that's extraordinary, and it's an extraordinarily positive thing. So we want to switch and finish off with Joe Tolles, who is joining us from Alabama, the United States. I'm sure you guys have seen him before. I love Joe in part because he's got, I think now, so eight boys that he has adopted. And so he's going to talk to us about adoption law, because of course that's a government action and it impacts families. Joe. Oh, you have to unmute.
I'll go as quickly as I can because I know we don't have that much time, but in the United States, there are 400,000 children that are in the foster care system. Those are children that belong to families that cannot, for whatever reason, take care of their children. And so the government sort of either removes them or they're relinquished to families that are going to take care of these kids. And they're subsidized to take care of these kids until they either go back into their biological or birth families, or they are adopted. In comparison, there's 135,000 children each year that are adopted in the United States. 59% of those children are from the foster care system. 26% are from international adoptions, and 15% of those children are voluntarily relinquished to the system. So everything that we're talking about impacts how families have to make decisions about who they can take care of and who they can't take care of. Of the foreign adoptions, the easiest place for anybody from the United States to adopt a child is from China. China is very organized with their system, and they also have the 2-child limit. Marvin, it's 3 now. And they made that decision because of the inequity in gender. But anyway, and because they're so organized, most of the children that are adopted from international adoption are from China, followed by the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ukraine, South Korea, and India. In the United States, you can't separate race from what we see in the adoption foster care system. So of the children that are adopted in the United States, most of them are white. And we're going to break that down a little bit, followed by Hispanic, Black, and African American, and two or more races being the fourth category. You find most children that are older in the foster care system because they are the least likely to be adopted. You know, one of the things that we say in the adoption system is everybody wants a white baby, and there are not that many white babies that everybody can get. So race plays a part in how the system is built up. Even when I continue, you'll see. So those older children, once a child is 5 or above, they become much harder to place in families. And so if they cannot find a foster care placement in a home, they're sort of put into a system that's institutionalized. And the only other system that I can compare that to is the criminal justice system. They're raised in residential treatment centers, group homes, or large sort of cottage-like communities where they stay until they age out, or if somebody adopts them. My focus has always been on the older children because nobody wants an older child. So I've adopted 8, the youngest being 13, and the oldest being 20 and like 8 months old. Now, the government spends 10 times more on foster care and adoption than they do on family reunification. So instead of supporting the families that have many have financial needs, health needs, instead of spending the money on that, they spend 10 times more on sort of continuing this institution, which is a whole other conversation, but very similar to the criminal justice system, where they spend more money at building prisons than they do at helping make somebody, rehabilitating somebody to be part of the government. I mean, to part of the community. We do have 3 countries that the United States has banned from adoption: Nepal, Guatemala, and the saddest one in my view is Vietnam, where we sort of had this long war, had many, many children of soldiers left, which caused a whole ripple effect for those children, and that's another conversation. And I guess the most recent example of how it really plays out in politics is when we were having some issues with Russia. One of the first things that Russia did said, okay, nobody can adopt any more children from the United States, which left many parents who had already been through the process and almost to the finalization of adoption left without those children. So I know I don't have a whole lot of time to talk much more about this, but it's a very complicated system. Race, economic status, all of those things are involved in how we decide on what happens to our children. So all of the things that we talked about today impact, the refugees and how they have to send their children while they stay in another country, or not get I'm trying to talk too quickly. But we have to make better decisions in what we're not thinking about. I think it's fair to say, or we're not thinking about enough, is that the decisions that our politicians and our communities make impacts the children, which we don't think enough about when we make those decisions.
Great, Joe. I think it's interesting because in some sense we've come full circle, right? Because we started with conflict, in violent conflict and the ways in which that leads to refugee crisis, but it also leads to adoption crises in some sense, right? And as you pointed out, I think Russians were saying, okay, now we don't get along with Americans, so no adoptions from the United States.
Right.
And so politics has real impacts on families, and kind of finishing with the sense that it affects adoption is really important. But also I think your point about kind of too much investment in institutional corrections, you might say, and reform of kids, rather than placing them and supporting families, loving families. So really interesting perspective. So
if I can just add one more thing, the other issue that really plays out and might have a religious basis is not all countries allow the same adoption, have the same adoption rules as, say, the United States. So fairly recently in the United States, single parents, gay and lesbian parents, or potential parents can adopt. There are many countries that won't allow a single man to adopt a child from their country. And there are many countries that won't allow a single woman to adopt. So the rules for international adoption are not aligned the same, and those are based on government decisions as well.
Yeah, and that connects with what Rosella mentioned earlier, right, from Italy, that civil unions for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered families oftentimes don't come with the same rights that married couples have. And so there's discrimination therein, with big implications for the ability of lesbian, gay, and bisexual and transgendered families to live a normal life. So thanks everybody. This is yet another really interesting discussion. I know that we cover a lot, but that's part of the purpose here. We're trying to kind of like get a full range of things that are impacting families, in this case, politics. Our final dialogue is on November 14th. That is the 6th and final dialogue, and it will be focused on, perhaps you might say, one of the most important topics, which is education, but also education and leisure. So in other words, what we do with our lives outside of work. And so I look forward to hearing from you and having you participate in that dialogue. I apologize again for the Zoom snafu. For some reason, it was not working this time. So I may have just a different link to be safe for our final dialogue, but I will share that widely to all of you. So thanks again for your participation. We will have a video recording of this, and it will be placed in the FDI Facebook group, which I'm assuming all of you are part of. And if not, please message me to get connected. And then we will also have it on our YouTube channel. Some of you may or may not be aware we have a YouTube channel, and all of the dialogues are placed there. So you can see them and share them with others. Yeah, it's on Facebook as well. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. Have a good rest of your Sunday. Bye.